A new video means we are finally official. Welcome back to the Betsperts Golf DFS Show. As always, I'm your host, John Daigle, joined none other by the sports betting manager here at Betsperts and 4for Football, also the host of the Move the Line NFL podcast. It's my friend in life, Ryan Noonan, fresh off a exciting, grueling week. How would you describe the Players Championship and all the content that was provided throughout the 5 days?
I think those both work, John. I mean, it was, a great tournament. Typically, I mean, it is obviously we love a loaded field like that. We're working with a very truncated prep week here for the Valspar, which we are all in the same boats. Players are in the same boat as well. So we'll do our best that we can to kind of give a first look and have hopefully some actionable takes here. We've been trying to dig in. We just finished our betting show not too long ago. Feel pretty good about that with Will Brinson, Ron, and I touch base on some of those best plays here. So hopefully we can steamroll that and parlay it into the DFS side.
We can't be a trio without a third. And for that, we need to call on our guy who fired off a 4,000 to 1 shot. Was it 400 to 1?
400, yeah.
400 to 1 on Saturday, which is why it's also important to be in that 4-4 and now Betsperts Golf Discord.
It's actually on Thursday.
Look at that. As we chat throughout the week, it was none other than Ron Klos, not in the tournament, not 400 to 1, but the one who told us to bet Paul Casey and to the 17th hole right there. But then, of course, Cam Smith got bigger balls than everyone, decided to go pin hunting over the water. And boy, was that nice.
Yeah, Cam Smith, you got to give him credit. I mean, he makes up so many shots around the green. He's just a genius on putting the ball. And so, yeah, we had some good shots. We had some guys in play, but it was a marathon. Looking at the weather for this week, there is a little bit of rain and wind in the forecast, but again, nothing like we saw this past week. So that's good to know.
You fired it off on Thursday. I fired off on Saturday that the top 8 golfers, out of them, only 2, Lahiri and Keith Mitchell, were the ones that weren't actually going to tee off for round 2 until Sunday. And you could get them at pretty good outright prices. I, of course, chose the wrong one, but as we always like to say in fantasy football as well, it's the process. I screamed as my wife left me. It's not about the results. It's about getting the best number. And so we did get good numbers there. So again, just make sure you're hanging out in the Betsperts Golf Discourse. Even if you're busy throughout the afternoon, just literally check in the morning. And usually our stuff is waiting for you because that's when we get up and start researching for our showdown and round betting content. But before we begin, we should note that as comes with a Monday conclusion, there's been a bit of a chaos. And that's kind of the short turnaround that we're all working with here at Betsperts Golf. So right now, we can go ahead and eliminate the golfers that have already withdrawn in Paul Casey, Doug Ghim, Joaquin Neiman, Taylor Pentrith, Patrick Rogers, Brent Snedeker, Maverick McNeely, Cam Young, and Sebastian Munoz. I believe those are all the notables, correct, Noonan?
Yeah, you didn't have. I have all those. Actually, didn't even have all of those. So you got some that I didn't have. You didn't miss anyone that I did have. So yeah, some I think frustrating names to cross off.
I think Paul Casey was the most frustrating one for DFS because that's pretty much we knew he was going to be the highest rostered player, and so it was going to make for a fun conversation, sort of like Matthew Fitzpatrick last week. But we'll also get back to Fitzpatrick this week, and so. Let's go ahead and jump in. Let's begin this journey with where we are headed this week because the Copperhead course here at Palm Harbor, Florida, just 23 miles west of beautiful downtown Tampa, requires us to understand the type of golfers we need to roster in order to take advantage of the uniqueness of 5 par 3s and 4 par 5s on said course. So I'm curious, Ron, what are the stats you are weighing heaviest this week when matching players to this particular course?
So yeah, I'm looking mostly at strokes gain approach. I mean, obviously we say that every week, but this is definitely a ball striker's course. When you read the quotes from some of the players, I'm going to read this one just from Kevin Streelman. It's a beauty of a quote. He says, "You got to put it in the right spots. As we know on this golf course, you'll make some bogeys pretty quick. A lot of players would say their favorite course in Florida that we play is here. They love it because of shot playability. You hit everything from 4-iron to driver off the tees. You shape them in both directions. You have par 5s you can go for, and you can lay some back. You've got par 3s. You have to be so exact where you leave it. There's no let up out there, but it's very fair at the same time. You've got to step up and hit a golf shot." So Paul Casey even talked about how a lot of these approaches are going to be from that long, kind of mid to long iron range. So 54% of approaches are from 175 yards plus. So just kind of in general, those guys who are good with their mid to long irons, scrambling is going to come into play because you have only a 56% greens and regulation percentage here, which is over 4% lower than the tour average. So scrambling, guys who can just save par. There's also talk in the past of boring golf plays here. And when I say boring golf, making pars, making bogeys, or not making bogeys, but bogey avoidance, and just kind of, you're not going to see a lot of birdies this week. The winning score has kind of been in that 10 and lower range for the most part over the last decade. So just looking for guys who can get up and down on the green, good with approach. Obviously, you want to have fairway finders. There's a lot of trouble off the tee here, mostly in the form of just shaping your shots. There's dog legs. There's 4 double dog legs, which is what Larry Packard, the course architect, is famous for. So just guys who can play, solid golf, who have everything in their bag this week, because it's going to be a real stern test.
I believe I read in your preview, speaking of that this course has provided the fewest birdies per tournament in its last 5 rounds as well, correct?
Yeah, last 5 events. Yes, it's the bogey to I think it's the birdie to bogey ratio is the lowest. So yeah, that's birdies are going to be hard to come by. Par 5. This is where par 5 scoring. That's another stat that's really important this week. You still have 4 par 5s, even though it's a par 71 course. So you really want golfers who are ranking high in that stat this week.
I also read in Ron's preview, Noonan, that the numerous pine trees he discussed, those weaving doglegs and fairways, actually start staring you down from the very first tee. So does that get you leaning on, let's say, driving accuracy as a key component for our lineups? Or does the fact that we believe we're going to see a lot of golfers club down immediately off the tee, ultimately leaving the driver in their bag, make that metric less important when we're building lineups?
That's a good question. I mean, I think accuracy matters here for sure. When you look at some of the guys, the leaderboards here historically have, maybe been populated with guys that aren't always, you would, profile for bombers courses per se, that, you have to be able to put yourself in the fairway. And then sometimes on the right side of the fairway to give yourself a shot at the green, like Ron referenced. Double dogleg just sounds, first of all, it's a great name for a show. It's also just like terrible. It's like torturous. I don't know why anyone would do that, except you just want to watch these guys burn down. But yeah, I mean, you got to be in the fairway. You got to be in the right side of the fairway to give yourself the approach shots, to give yourself positions to not only score, but to not put up the crooked numbers like Ron's talking about. So yeah, more so than most events, I do think it matters here. Pretty consistently. And that's something that, Paul Casey is a guy that does that very well. You look at some of these elite guys at the top of the board that have had success here, have really popped that week in accuracy. So it does typically correlate well with success.
What else are you looking at for this tournament? Just overarching ideas, thoughts, whenever you start building.
Yeah, we need long approach shots. So whether it's the forced layups or just the nature of the course with the par 5s all being difficult, all being over 200 yards, we need guys that are able to score and guys who are able to find greens and regulation and accuracy from not just 200 and above, but like 225 and above. It tends to be almost double a normal tour event here. So want to weight that a little bit more than normal too. Some of those guys we'll talk about here at length, because we just need long irons, or you need guys that hit their fairway woods fairly accurately, because it's going to be in play more often than not.
And those differentiated stats are typically what you include either on Twitter or in your model in the Discord, right, Ron? I know sometimes when these items like proximity to the hole, just random stats that do actually matter in these courses, I know you in your article will dig into those and say this player historically has done this actual metric really well.
Yeah, for sure. And even like a course like this where, greens are so tough to hit, just going back through time, seeing what other courses are similar and, okay, how did these players perform on these greens that are also very tough to hit? And so you kind of combine those together and you kind of get a good picture of, okay, this player, he performs well on greens that are really small or greens that are tough to hit. So yeah, those are all good things that I'm going to continue to keep going back to and keep researching here.
Before we dive in directly into the golfers we are all thinking about playing, I have in front of me, actually, I dug up a few averages from last year's top 10 finish. And so I'm curious, and I want to get both of your thoughts on this. If any golfers, whether it be one or multiple, stand out when you hear these stats among last year's top 10. Last year's top 10 average, for instance, strokes gained off the tee, 0.1. Not too much, but gained on approach, 0.7 inside the top 10. Strokes gained putting, 1.5 inside the top 10. DFS ownership, the top 10 averaged 8%, and average DFS salary of that top 10 finish last year was only $8K 100, so 8,100. Anyone off the top of your head right now, before we dive in and start with the expensive guys that we already know are gathering ownership, stand out immediately?
Guys that are like 8,100 in that range, that profile around that same thing. So kind
average,
of like that
so give or take
guy.
a few, 300, 400, yeah.
Yeah, there's a few guys in that range. I actually think it's a really nice range that we'll get to. A guy that I know, John, you and I were both on last week was Russell Knox.
Mm-hmm.
Form is pretty immaculate. He is very streaky with the putter, but the irons have been really terrific lately, and that plays anywhere. And he's, solid with long irons too, and he's right on the dot, right at that number. Adam Hadwin just a little bit below that, I think, is a guy that Ron and I both are very high on, based on our discussions earlier today. And then maybe a little bit above that, I would go with Keegan Bradley, who nice course history here, if you're into that at all. Obviously, a nice little run for Keegs over the weekend at the Players. Ball striking is never a problem for Keegan. He is very accurate and long off the tee. Obviously, we get the full Keegan experience when he gets onto the greens, and has found some sort of success here historically with even being field average. And for Keegan, that's a win, right? So if the ball striking is going to be immaculate and we get a field average putting output from Keegan, he's going to contend. So a few guys right in that range that profile very nicely based off of that kind of hierarchy.
Do those numbers, Ron, and the salaries available also make you want to nix some of the, or most of the 10K golfers and start in that range and just build a solid foundation of medium priced players?
Yeah, there's some high priced guys, like Morikawa. He's 110th in my putting ranking this week. So, you take that into account. And there is a guy kind of in that range you brought up, staring us right in the face at 8,300 this week, Webb Simpson. He's approach 16th, and then he's 5th putting. So if we're going by those stats you mentioned, he kind of fits that bill exactly. It's just kind of a question of his neck. Is his neck healthy? Hopefully we'll get a better read on him this week, but whether you play him or not, that might be a little risky.
Webb Simpson, on one hand, I do know I saw the initial first run of the Betsperts golf model that is not released on the site just yet because he was pretty high. He was so high. He was so high that we may have to protect our ass and look at it one more time. But nonetheless, we are high on as a team. And also to your point, Noonan, we got word in his last press conference, Russell Knox even admitted he got a putting lesson from Lynn Matthias before the Players round. And he had a great putting week, actually. He had some long birdie attempts, but the putting was still outstanding in 2 putts. So nonetheless, let's go ahead and dive into the actual golfers in the top slate. Really quickly, though, just to let you know, right now, if you do sign for a 4for4 subscription, you will not only get a $100 Fanatics gift card. So basically, you're already chopping off $100 from your 4for4 sub, leaving it to be only $69 more. But you're also going to be grandfathered in to our Betsperts Golf sub whenever we go behind the paywall in a couple of weeks. So literally, I can't scream that we are giving you more free shit than what we are literally handing to you right now. And I'm telling you, the moment they let me delete that advertisement, I'm not saying it anymore. It's done. We're making you pay for everything. But right now, you are literally getting, for $69, a nice total. You are getting 3 things. And also jerseys, golf gear, whatever you want to go buy at the Fanatics store, literally $100. So that's the best advertisement I got. I can't sell it any more than that. It's right there for a couple more weeks to go take advantage of it.
You want to go grind player props on the NCAA tournament all weekend? I know Daigle doesn't love college hoops, but we have a nice little, player prop model that's done very well. You don't even have to bet sides or totals. Just tail us on some props, just watch some golf, watch some tournament in the background, and it pays for itself so quickly. It's an incredible deal.
Connor also has already dug up a deep dive article on bets he has for college basketball. I saw him post it, and he asked if anyone was ready for college basketball, and I just thought, nope, I'm not ready. I'm not going to watch it, but I don't want my Mitches to burn, so I'm not going to say that on Twitter at all. Let's go ahead and start, Rod, though, with the top. And we are doing something differently. For those listening at home through the podcast feed, the Betsperts Golf on iTunes and Spotify feeds, right here is the top tier listed, but it's not so much the top tier of salaries. I think these names, Justin Thomas, Victor Hovland, Colin Morikawa, Luis Oosthuizen, and Tyrell Hatton, I believe these are going to gravitate and garner a ton of the ownership. I think this is where people are thinking at the top for salaries. So I'm curious whether or not one of these stand out. You've already mentioned Morikawa and his putting woes, or does the highest salary player you are rostering begin somewhere else not on this list?
Yeah, I'm starting with Justin Thomas. He's so close to winning. If you go back to that Saturday at Sawgrass, he had that bogey-free 69 into the wind. You saw him shaping his shots just left and right. And, that's kind of perfect for this course, especially off the tee with these dog legs. He's got 2 top 20s here in the past. I think he really, really wants to break the drought. He hasn't won in over a year. And when you look at his performance, I mean, he's got 6 top 8s in his last 10 events. So it's not like he's been playing poorly or missing cuts. Like, he's close. And so he is definitely where I'm starting here at 11K.
If I shot 69 on if I shot 69 anywhere, by the way, I'd be crying. But if I shot 69 on Saturday in that weather, it genuinely reminded me of what it took for an NBA team to win the bubble title. Like, you have to go through so much more mental battles than you do with a normal 69. Like, to pull 300 to reach that point was truly amazing. Some of the best golf ever. Noonan, though, beyond that, where does it start for you at the top when building lineups?
Yeah, this is tricky. I mean, I think that just out of the gate, the top 3 are so much above everyone else here. When you look at some of the corollary courses, that makes sense as far as what works here. Some small samples with, one-offs with Muirfield Village and the concession kind of one-offs that we saw through the, COVID swing. But like, Morikawa won both of those events. Victor Hovland was second in one, was tied for third in the other. JT was tied for second in one and 13th in the other. So like, ball striking through the roof. These are probably 3 of the best in the world. It's just really tough. Like, Ron's model, as far as how it relates for Colin Morikawa, gives me a little bit of pause here. The Morikawa lean would be with the thought of, hey, he didn't have to play in the weekends per se at the TPC Sawgrass mess that everyone else did. He missed the cut there, which is unusual for him. So maybe there's something to be said there for him. I love the form that Victor Hovland is in a place like this where, the ball striking, the high ball flight, the long irons, something that he is really incredible at. So I just think that there's an ability to make really, really balanced lineups this week. And I'm going to probably be underweight on the field unless there's something in Ron's final model that makes me have to jam Justin Thomas in. I just really like kind of the balance builds this week.
Where are we at currently, Ron, as a team on projected ownership? Because as I've listened, as I've gathered, as I created this list, seeing and reading and listening that this is where the rest of the industry is at right now, just talking out loud about these players, I honestly don't know if someone comes in heavily rostered among this tier. It seems like right now it's fairly spread out.
Yeah, and it's so early too, with the prices just coming out. I don't have a great read on it, but I think you can assume those top 3 probably will be high round. I mean, when you go down a little bit to Xander Schauffele at 10-3 and DJ at 10-2, people probably still have questions about those 2. So I could definitely see the top 3. I think it'll be spread out, but I think those 3 will probably be heads and tails above kind of anyone else in that top group.
Are there any thoughts beyond this list, Noonan? Because Ron mentioned DJ. That's actually kind of where my brain went immediately. And it could be a recency bias since he did just tie the Players' Championship record for low 18-hole score and shooting, the 963 in tournament history, and the first since Koepka did it in 2018. But also, like, I like Oosthuizen as well, just because his last 4 rounds here, T7, T16, T2, and T8, also in good form, a couple wild holes, but a lot of what happened over the Players were throwing out the window because pretty much if you drew the weather, you were screwed from the very beginning.
Yeah, the DJ thing is interesting because you have to wonder about, like, there's nothing better than a no smoke backdoor top 10 like DJ had, right? Where he was just no pressure. He's just out there trying to get into form and got really dialed in. And he could do that. I mean, we're talking about someone who was the number one player in the world for a very long stretch, and really hasn't been that bad of late. We just haven't seen him that much. Again, I think everyone reads into the body language there about his lack of caring. I think it's just his natural disposition to be that's
literally who he's been his entire life,
career. Yeah.
Like maybe a practice swing, maybe get up there and hit the ball. And even years ago, when asked how he does it so carefree, he just literally responded, "The ball can only do two things: it's either a good shot or a bad shot." That's it.
I just think that's so overplayed, and you can't tell me that this guy's not competitive and doesn't want to win and beat his peers. And a little longer in the tooth than some of those guys. Let's not forget that he was the anchor at the Ryder Cup. Won all 5 of his matchups. Like, the form hasn't been that bad. Again, I know I'm referencing something that happened in late September, but again, he has not been terrible of late too. So we'd like to see that nice round 4. Another guy that's just below the Hatton tier is Shane Lowry. I think Shane Lowry at 97, excellent form, terrific long iron player. He's actually second on the tour so far this season in accuracy on approaches above 200 yards. We know we're going to have a bunch of those with the par 3s. And he is second in strokes gained ball striking over the last 20 rounds. So, short-term form for Shane Lowry is really, really nice. So like him quite a bit there, and a little bit of savings from that top tier.
And I don't think we can ignore Usti though either. Kind of what you brought up, Daigle. His course history here is impeccable. I mean, you have to consider that. I know his irons were a little shaky last week. But just overall, like, he's 9th tee to green in this entire field over the last 36 rounds. He's just so solid in every area typically, that, in ownership, even last week, I think he was like 9-10% owned only. So, if that kind of holds this week, I'm sure it'll jump a little bit perhaps with the course history, but I definitely think he's worth a shot up here as well.
It's what makes it such an interesting DFS week, because all the items we talked about that matter for this course were essentially the same last week, except we had Mother Nature come into play last week. You need to be great in approaching and proximity to the hole, and need to be able to scramble and putt really well. Different greens, of course, as you've talked about in your article, Ron, but it's essentially the same kind of golfers we're looking for. Very quickly, before we move on, though, to that Shane Lowry tier, because I think that is a very important tier that we're going to see people huddle around. I'm curious to get your thoughts, Ron, on Xander Schauffele, because I think it's interesting, since he will be making his Valspar debut and missed the Players Cut, literally one of those guys we talked about that strictly due to the weather, short end of the stick, that he had to play through nature and just didn't make the cut. That was clearly a farce, though, whereas his recent form has been pretty tremendous, and all of these metrics we're trying to find the best golfers. So I think I'm not saying he's one of my top plays. I think he's a wild card that I need more information on, because I genuinely don't know how to handle him just yet.
Yeah, and I think people will shy away from him just because, there's kind of some bias there with, he hasn't played here before. But at this course, we've seen a couple guys who, haven't had a whole lot of history here, and they've jumped up pretty high. And I think just remembering he was 3 under par until that weather hit. So he was hitting the ball well last week at the Players. He's 4th in this field, strokes gained total over the last 24 rounds. He's really good at bogey avoidance, which is going to be important here. He is definitely, if you're looking for an ownership type leverage play, I definitely think he's definitely a great option.
If you're going to play Louis and Xander in the same lineup, then you got to find someone else who's going to win the tournament. Because we just know historically those guys, they flirt with top 5s and top 2s all the time. But that is a very niche joke. But I appreciate the laugh.
Let's go ahead and move on to that Shane Lowry tier, though, because I think these are some names that are absolutely going to get steamed and popular. We already talked about Matt Fitzpatrick, our boy, who, although we wanted to fade him and guessed his ownership correctly, 39% last week, 38% in the Millie, 39% in mid stakes. One of the most populars, caught the weather, 4 over, got kicked out before the 3rd round. We will take that luck, but as I always say, better lucky than to be right. But now, for all those reasons that we chased him, we not only have that, we not only have him getting eliminated strictly due to the weather, he also had his price jump $1,300 on DraftKings to $9K, which I think makes him less attractive. And if that's the case, that's actually kind of where it starts for me. Not only that, but Noonan, I saw you fire off some outrights on Fitzpatrick as well. So I think that's where it starts for you.
Yeah, I have no problem starting a lineup this week with Fitzpatrick. I know that's like weird because we have all these guys way above him, but like, to Daigle's point, like the flop lag off of last week, highly owned trunk slammer. No one likes to go back to that. And this is like one of the best putters in the world who just couldn't make a putt last week. And so like that's going to get itself back to normal. Last week was really hard to fade him because he was so mispriced. And some of the reasons I always typically fade him, similar to a Jordan Spieth or Cam Smith, even at times historically, have been some of the ways they get it done is this just impeccable around the green play and their ability to run so hot with the putter. And those just tend to be less sticky statistical stats than, guys that are tee to green and stripe it. But like what we've seen from Fitz, gains in distance, absolute immaculate iron play and approach play. He is incredible as the best player in the field on tour this season and approaches over 200 yards. So the long irons, what we need to highlight here with the par threes, he pops in that too. So there are so many reasons to go back to Fitz here from an outright standpoint. And then also if we have some ownership lag based off of what happened earlier last week, I think it's a great place to go.
And how would you handle that, Ron, if we were assuming, and this is what I'm assuming right now, again, it's only been 24 hours. We've had to collect a lot of information, and hopefully we'll spit it out correctly by Wednesday night on betspertsgolf.com. But right now, I think Burns, Lowry, probably Kokrak, like they're going to be higher, significantly higher rostered than Fitzpatrick, giving everything we've talked about. And so, like, how do you handle Fitzpatrick compared to those three guys who we don't hate? Like, we think they're actually can contend here. But given ownership, we're trying to build unique lineups.
Yeah, Fitzpatrick has been on a roll lately. Like Ryan said, like over the last 24 to 36 rounds, he's literally one of the top 10 golfers in the world. I mean, even approach isn't his strong game, but he's kind of been dialed into everything. And last week, he just had a bad putting week. So that's his strength. So I definitely would not expect that to happen 2 weeks in a row. He doesn't have the best course history here, which again, will probably keep more people off of him. So yeah, I have no reason not to go to Fitzpatrick here.
I think what's also interesting, one, that I screwed up and that I did not add Bubba Watson to this list, who I also think is going to be super steamed, especially compared to Matthew Fitzpatrick. So I'm curious to get your thoughts, Noonan, on Watson, who I also know is one of your favorites, but I also know is one of the field's favorites as well.
Yeah, I mean, Bubba, just like we talked about earlier with how incredible the JT Storm bogey-free run was, Bubba did the same thing on a course that he typically hasn't shown well at. I think Ron referenced it in his player notes. Like, this is a course that Bubba loves to play. A guy, when you think about who's going to succeed in a course that has double dog legs, it's Bubba, right? He loves to move the ball. Really, even the last couple of years when he's maybe taken a step down from where he had been over the last few years, ball striking is still tremendous. He just runs really cold with the putter at times. So again, he absolutely nosedived over the weekend. So I'm interested to see how people respond to his 78s, 76 at the players on the final two rounds. See if that drives any ownership down. I did take him in the outright market. I know Ron did as well. I will maybe back off in DFS and just cheer for the outrights if he tends to be a guy that's going to be north of 20% this week. But if he's going to be hanging around in the low teens or something like that, I have no problem matching or being a little bit above the field on Bubba.
And Ron, anyone else that we might be missing? Keegan Bradley, also a name we put on this list, if only because we think he's going to be popular. He did lead or co-lead after each of the first three rounds here last year. Anyone else, though, around this pricing group from low 8K, high 9K?
Yeah, Abraham Answer at 9,300 is someone that's pretty high on my list. Really good course history here. He finished 5th and 16th the last 2 years. Last week at the Players, he gained 2.8 shots on approach. He's a fairway finder. Just, kind of seems to be the type of guy who he's not long on distance anyways. And so kind of a positional, strategic type course that Innisbrook is. I think he fits very well on. Alex Noren is another guy I just kind of keep coming back to. 8,700 seems a bit high, which again, looking at ownership might take a lot of people off him. But he's gained 13.9 shots on approach his last 3 events. And he's not even known to be a good approach player. Like his strength is around the greens. And so, that really jumps out to me. And he struggled a little bit around the greens and putting last week, but putting is so volatile, it'll come and go. So that's another great leverage play, in my opinion, at 8,700.
Let's go ahead and move on then to our cheap tier, because as we talked about last week, if you want to pay up even for a couple guys, you're going to have to find some bottom feeders. And I have a list that I started that you two are more than welcome to complete. This is sort of who jumped out initially that I believe may or not be popular, but more importantly, as for instance, Charlie Hoffman, I think his long-term form fits well here and he will be under rostered. But I know, Noonan, you already mentioned Adam Hadwin, for instance, his only PGA Tour title here in 2017, of course, and he happened to follow that up with the top 12 finish in 2018. I'm not sure if he's going to get over rostered. He might, but around him and him in general, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'll reiterate the Hadwin play. I mean, I think he's terrific play. Ninth in the field in approach, 16th in ball striking of late. Again, another guy terrific with the long irons, checking all those boxes. He's 13th on the tour in accuracy of on approaches above 200 yards. Some of the other guys, Charlie Hoffman, I did look at, and I'm trying to think of why I didn't note him. I think he's been spraying it off the tee. Yeah, he's been really bad accuracy off the tee. It's not really how he's been historically, but we were going on basically, a full 6 months, not a ton of events, but he's been not very good off the tee, and we obviously need to find fairways here. I do think probably if you are going back longer term, he had such a nice run with approaches for a while, he probably makes some sense for people. Also in that range, Kevin Streelman was mentioned. Ron referenced him with the quotes, and he surprised me when I did a little bit on Streelman. I'm hoping he found a little something with his irons at Sawgrass. Really accurate off the tee. He posted a 7th at Concession, which I referenced as one of the corollary courses here this week. He's missed the cut here the last 3 times he's played. Again, I don't get too much into that, but he's also won here. So we've shown that he's been able to play well. It's been pretty streaky. So again, fairway finder, good with the long irons, nice with the corollary courses. I found him to be a little expensive, but again, Streelman can be pretty streaky, and I don't think he's going to be owned. When you look at some of the other guys a little bit above him in this range, I don't think he is going to garner any ownership. And again, I am obligated to reference Aaron Wise at 7,700, who will either be the death of me or, the entire Twitter sphere will celebrate with me when he finally wins or does anything of note here in the normal season.
Is there a course that Aaron Wise doesn't fit in? That's what we're really asking ourselves.
He's good. He's good at golf. The ball striking was good last week. He just couldn't putt. So I'm thinking we maybe turn the corner here with Aaron Wise. And again, the outright play we had to make, he was 130 to 1. If he's going to get any ownership here, he's an easy fade. But, we all have weaknesses.
For those listening, I also have Denny McCarthy on here for his scrambling ability, but should also note I should have put Harold Varner here on who made my values list. Will probably be on the article at betspertsgolf.com Wednesday morning whenever I get this values list finalized. And remember, we updated those. We talked after a happy hour meetup, some of us in the Chicago area. I came back and immediately just started messaging y'all, and we came to a consensus to add and take away a couple values as well. So we definitely keep an eye on ownership and those throughout the afternoon and evening. Besides those names, though, also Vaughn Taylor, very cheap. Ron, who else are you thinking for some bottom rung individuals?
Well, just going back to what Noonan said, and we're on a lot of the same plays this week. Just Aaron Wise, he 7,700. At Bay Hill, he gained 10.2 shots tee to green. Last week at the Players, he gained 5.5 on approach. So he's really rounding into form. I mean, just those mid to long irons, 175 to 200. He just needs to get that putting game going. But just if you're playing a lot of GPPs, looking for upside, someone with a high ceiling, you can't really get better than Aaron Wise because you just don't know what he's going to do. All right, are you ready for the Vaughn Taylor stat of the week that I found?
Oh, baby. Please tell me it's a good one since he was on my list.
So he is the only player in the entire field in the top 30 in fairways gained, which is important here, strokes gained approach, and then strokes gained around the green. Okay, he's the only one that fits the bill for all those. And, I mean, if you're boiling down, the important stats of the week, those are kind of 3 of the most important ones. And even par 5 scoring. Par 5 scoring is going to be critical this week just because, the par 3s and the par 4s here are pretty much the toughest on tour. And then when you look at par 5 scoring, he's also 32nd in par 5 scoring. So, I know he always seems to pop in everyone's model, But this might actually be a week where, that 6,700 could take you a long ways. And, I'm not saying he's going to win, but, if he can get a top 20, that will definitely pay off.
I must say, I already know what's going to happen. Like in our best bets article going up Wednesday afternoon, I guarantee you now I'm going to sneak in a Vaughn Taylor makes the cut and T20. Long shot bets that are also safe. No need to bet the outrights, even though we're going to have those in there too. I already like Vaughn T20. That makes a ton of sense. Last week, I asked you your favorite outright bet. I think that made sense given we knew it was a top-heavy field and a very experienced golfer like Cam Smith was going to have to be the one to win. This week, I actually just want to leave in asking right now, Tuesday, just 24 hours of information going into building lineups. What is your strategy for building? How are you focusing right now? Because for me, I think it starts with Matt Fitzpatrick for sure, and then one of Oos or Schauffele, and then fitting in probably around Fitzpatrick's range. Vaughn Taylor as my one cheapie. That's where I sit right now.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to start some lineups with JT on top. I just think he's in a really good spot here. But yeah, like you said, when you get down to that 9K range, starting with Louis at 9.9, and then, you could easily go, answer Kokrak, Fitzpatrick, and just kind of build on that 9K range and work your way down. Bubba had a famous quote here where he said, boring golf, pays here. And so when you get into that 7K range, you see a lot of guys that kind of fit that bill. We haven't mentioned some of these yet, but even a Christian Bezuidenhout, he's not going to win most likely, but, a guy who can avoid bogeys, a guy who can scramble, who can par. Mackenzie Hughes, he's got the magic around the greens. Always seems kind of in these tough conditions to kind of take his game to another level. He's only 7,800. Brian Harmon, 7,600. So there's a lot of value, just guys who, not looking to win necessarily, but just let's get through the cut. Let's, who knows what can happen if, conditions get tough. And these guys kind of have those skills just to survive and to keep going when it gets tough. So I'm looking probably more starting in that 9K and then building kind of in that 7K range, just kind of spreading out down there.
Yeah, I think there's a few other, like if you want to get down and get up, the top guys, and you got to get down into the low 7s and 6s. I'll just rattle off a couple other names that I think are worthwhile because you're going to need to get down here. You're going to have to. Adam Svensson makes some sense. Miscut last time out at API, but accurate off the tee. Irons have been great. Marty Laird, Ron referenced on our betting show. I did a little digging on Laird. And that makes some sense to me. 13th in strokes gained ball striking over the last 20 rounds. Accurate off the tee. Long irons are great. You can get down to Sam Ryder, who struggled off the tee, but typically is fairly accurate. And the irons have been hot. JJ Spawn is a guy that's going to find fairways. And another guy that actually makes a little bit of sense to me is Kramer Hickok down at 6,500. It's probably the lowest I would go. Nice little showing at TBC Sawgrass. Finds fairways. Handles his long irons well too. You're going to need some of these guys if you're going to start in that JT Morikawa Hovland tier. But for me, I do think I'm probably going to go a little light this week. It might just be a 3 lineup week for me. And I have no problem starting, like I said, with Fitz. I have no problem being heavy in that upper area. Maybe I start with a Shane Lowry and still get Fitz. I think just off the cuff here, Lowry, Fitz, and Hadwin are kind of my 3 favorite guys, just from a pure, points per dollar standpoint. Obviously, I'd love to build with Hovland, Morikawa, and JT, but that you're going to have to get. I don't even know that you can do that. You have to get some $5,800 guys in there. But I had no problem starting with the Fitz Lowry area and kind of going from there.
Do you have a favorite 7,400 under right now? I know you mentioned a lot, but is there one truly that sticks out for you that for sure you're playing?
7,400 and under.
Yeah, give or take. Just your favorite cheapie.
Cheapie. I like Laird in that way, and I like Mito as well. I think Mito Pereira is a nice price. 72.
All right. With that being said, Ron, tell them what you got coming up over the next 48 hours before we get another tournament.
Yeah, we got the betting preview coming out. We've got DFS, just like you, Daigle. We've got first round leader tomorrow. We've been close with some of those. We had some good success a few weeks back. So looking to get back on the roll with that. Those are the main 3 things coming up.
Noonan, what do you got coming up at betspertsgolf.com?
So the people didn't get to see last week because everything got really wonky as far as like rounds go. And right now the lights are on at betspertsgolf.com for free. Ron's in tournament betting stuff is the best out there. It is better than anyone else out there. I mean, I am very, very confident saying this. It's not just going and looking at guys that didn't putt well the week before. He like brings it back and regresses it to their baseline on the putting surface. It is the best stuff out there in round betting with us at Betsperts Golf using Ron's round 2, round 3, round 4 stuff is incredibly profitable. So highly suggest. Hopefully the weather holds off and Ron can put those out in the normal routine and cadence that those go out, because they are excellent stuff. But yeah, betting preview coming for me as well. Like I said, we got the betting show already in the hopper. But again, don't forget to sign up. Look in the show notes. Yeah, join our newsletter. Our Discord is free as well. You want to get in and then you have conversations with like-minded people who are grinding the same thing that you are. We are in there and available and ready to chat. So definitely check all that out.
Right now, it's literally people just talking about golf bets. If that sounds like something you want to do from your phone, have at it. When people say newsletters, usually costs a little bit to get involved in a sub afterwards. Right now, it's free to jump into all of it. Literally, go to the show notes, look at all that. Again, and for those who don't want to do all the research, we typically do it for you, but say you don't have time for a long article, we aggregate all of our information. Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday evening will be our best bets article. This is literally our favorite bets for the week. That's simple. And then also we will have a morning, like Ron does the showdown notes. And I forgot what the second thing I was going to say. I was trying to wait for it for the time, but nevertheless, we're getting out of here. Good luck this week. Again, it's all free. Go check it out. We'll see you next time.